we will interject as you go beyond that limit. So we're just about to go on the air. Am I correct? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Charter Oak International School in West Hartford. We are here, the League of Women Voters and the West Hartford Community Television, to have a forum for the Board of Education, the race for the Board of Education for 2017. We are pleased to be able to bring you this nonpartisan voter service. This forum is coming to you live from the Academy, the International Academy, and will be shown numerous times on WHC-TV preceding the November 7th election. It will also be available for streaming through the station's YouTube channel. We thank the campaigns for their cooperation, and especially Principal Melanin and the town administrators for granting the use of this school. I'm Carol Mulready. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters and will serve as the moderator for this forum. The League of Women Voters is a non-profit, non-partisan political organization that works to encourage informed and active participation in government. I am joined this evening by Manuela Canales, who will read and translate any questions received in Spanish from our live audience. She is a 20-year resident of West Hartford. She works full-time as a civil servant for a state agency. She is a founding member of the nonprofit Hello West Hartford, which involves the citizens of West Hartford who speak up to 70 languages, different languages in our town. So we are pleased to have her here. She grew up in Spain, and I think is going to be just fine translating for us. The format for this election event will consist of audience-generated questions, with each candidate having up to 90 seconds to respond to the question. A lottery was conducted to determine the order for candidate responses, and then we will continue in a round-robin process. The audience has been asked not to applaud until the end of the question period in order to save time for questions and answers. Now, to get us started, each candidate will have 60 seconds to introduce herself or himself to you. First, we welcome Rob Levine. Thank you, Rob.
Should I just start right from here?
No, right there. You stay right there.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rob Levine. I'm a Republican candidate for Board of Ed this November. Basically, I'm running because I want to help bring change to the town as far as the Board of Ed is concerned. The majority Democratic Party has been in control of the Board of Ed and the Town Council for over a decade. And I would just like to read some brief statistics to you instead of telling you about my past. Things to think about. Our student enrollment level has dropped a little over 1% in the last 11 years. Our budget has increased 51%. Our per pupil cost has increased 53%. We have a 29% increase in personnel, a 54% increase in teachers, and a 46% increase in personnel across all boards. I think we need to ask ourselves if our enrollment is static and our town population is the same, where is the money going to? All I care about is our students and the outcomes that they have that are going to make it the best of their ability to be the best students they can be. I want the money to go to them. And I'm not sure that's happening anymore. Thank you.
Good evening.
Next we have Lorna. Thank you.
Good evening, Lorna Thomas Farquharson. First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters, the West Hartford Community Television, Charter Oak International Academy, and you viewers who are here in the audience as well as watching on television for being a part of this event. I have been a resident of West Hartford for over 17 years, and proud to say that. I certainly enjoy all that West Hartford has to offer in terms of the quality of life, but certainly the quality of the excellent education system that we have. And I'm a parent as well, so that even bodes even more of a reason why I'm proud of the school system that we have. I I am the proud mother of 2 daughters, both of whom are daughters here, rather students here at Charter Oak International Academy. Juliana, 4th grade, and Gabrielle, 1st grade. They're here, so thank you for supporting Mommy. And because our quality education is important, it's important for our kids to not only do well academically, but also socially and emotionally. That is the piece that I really want to recognize and support with all of our students, all of our children. As a town, we can do that collectively. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to engaging with you this evening.
Thank you. Next we have Jay Sargent.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Jay Sargent. I'm an incumbent Republican on the Board of Education, and I'm running for re-election. And I want to say up front how excited I am to be here this evening in front of the citizens of West Hartford and on television tonight. Hopefully people are able to catch this from the safety and comfort of their homes. My primary reason for running is pretty simple. In my 5 years on the board, I have seen our budgets increase exponentially, and that simply is not a sustainable trajectory. We last year went through what I like to call a root canal and dove into a lot of different budget items, and we considered whether or not we wanted to keep them in the budget. And unfortunately, we decided to keep a lot of them in the budget, and I begged our majority to not go down that path, and instead they chose to ignore that advice, and we are now facing a real train wreck coming with the state budget. I can't say this enough. Change has to come to West Hartford, and if you want change, then you need to vote for me and for Rob Levine as change agents for this Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Next we have Cheryl Greenberg.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Greenberg. I'm current chair of the Board of Ed. I teach African American history at Trinity College. I've also taught in China. I've taught in Finland. I teach in a Connecticut prison, and I taught in a New York high school. So I think all the time about how to teach critical thinking and creative thinking and respectful dialogue. I'm also the parent of 2 children who went through the West Hartford public schools, as well as the Finnish and Chinese schools. And I know how important quality teaching and an inclusive and rigorous curriculum and child-centered learning are. And as a parent of children who did not know how to speak Finnish or Chinese when they first arrived, I know how critical effective ESOL programs are. Our glory in our town is our diversity. We speak 73 languages. We are diverse racially, ethnically, economically. We have children with different learning styles, with intellectual and different physical and emotional needs, and all this enriches our town. But it also means that we have a number of programs that we have to make sure are available to everybody. We all love our schools, we all love our town, but the current budget is making it very difficult. So if I'm re-elected, I promise to look for more savings and more effective funding sources, but I also promise to keep fighting, to keep the cuts out of the classrooms, and to preserve the core mission of our schools to protect all the students here.
Thank you. And next we have Deb Poland.
Good evening. My name is Deb Poland, and I'm seeking your support for the Board of Education. I'm really pleased to be here tonight at this forum organized by the League, West Hartford Community Television, and asked for by the residents of West Hartford, so we can talk together tonight about how to preserve our schools as one of our town's greatest assets. My husband, Ian, and I moved here about 18 years ago. We have raised 2 kids. We're still raising 2 kids here in town that went through Aiken, King Philip, and Hall High School. Our son, Jordan, is a sophomore now at University at Albany, and our daughter is a junior at Hall. I have about 19 years of experience working in public policy, both at the state capitol and for a nonprofit. And I'd like to bring that experience with me to the important issues that are discussed at the level of the Board of Education in town. I've been active in our community as a member of a variety of different boards, and now I'm hoping to represent you on the Board of Education. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much, all. And for our first question, which will go first to Rob Levine and then down the line, this was done by lottery. There are thousands of students across the country who are currently storm refugees in need of an education home. Would you support bringing students to West Hartford should we be called upon? And we're going to translate that.
Hay miles de estudiantes en este país que en estos momentos son refugiados de las tormentas, en necesidad de encontrar un hogar para su educación. ¿Usted apoyaría traer esos estudiantes a West Hartford? si nos piden hacerlo.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, I also wanted to mention real quick, thanks for the question. I also want to thank the West Hartford Education Association. I received their endorsement this year for the election, so I just want to say a quick thank you to them. And also, 1 minute's hard to get everything in. I have a wife that's a teacher in town for 17 years, and I have 3 school-age children as well. Regarding the question, my heart goes out to those folks. Obviously, everyone deserves to have a fair and good education, regardless of where they are. And I think it's a wonderful idea to welcome them to our community if we have the space for them. And I would also always say that we have to look at things from a budget standpoint as well. We have to be compassionate, and I think that's foremost important, but we also have to be considerate of the delicate budget situation that we are in. And without knowing at this time, as far as I know, what, if any, money we're getting from the state, budget-wise, you know, I can't just say blatantly without knowing the financial impact that we should just say, yes, this is something we should do. On the merits of it, simply speaking, socially, yes, absolutely want to help out kids, always support children getting education, but we have to keep in mind that West Hartford is in crisis, and that it is not going to get better. For far too long, we have just tried to be everything to everyone, and we can't continue to do that. We have to be measured in our response as far as how we do things budgetarily, and that's what we have to do going forward. Thank you.
Laura will be next. Laura,
To follow with that question.
oh, would like it repeated?
No, oh, I'm
Same
sorry.
question.
Okay, great. Thank you. Same question, yes. So I respect what you have shared. I think certainly when it comes to considering whether or not to house persons that have, due to unforeseen circumstances, no longer have housing and are no longer able to receive education, I think that it is important to recognize we're talking about human beings. And for that reason, my initial response is, let's see what we can do to try to support human beings, to try to support children. I think there's a difference between crisis intervention and maintenance. It's one thing if we're talking about housing persons for a long, extended period of time, but if we're talking about an immediate crisis intervention to help persons that are in need on an immediate level, to help try to reclaim their safety, and in terms of housing, in terms of food, in terms of clothing, in terms of education, which all children should be afforded the opportunity to do. I think that as much as West Hartford, we speak of how proud we are of our town, how we service so many persons, we're proud of our diversity, we're proud of our quality education, but there comes a time where we must practice what we preach. So I think for that reason, certainly have more discussion, but I think the discussion should be along the lines of what can we do? How can we support others? Because I'm certainly sure if something were to happen to us as a larger community on that same realm, we would want others to support us as well.
Thank you. Jay, would you like to
Sure, I'll weigh in. I look at this as an issue of capacity. We certainly have the space here in West Hartford for these children if they were to come. We are well along the path of having open choice seats. The difference is that for open choice, we at least get reimbursed for those. We don't know how many kids, and we certainly don't know what sort of needs that they would have, and therefore it'd be very difficult to assess the impact on our district. I think we would have to be able to do that before we can speak intelligently about it. I mean, I can sit here and gush tears and joys and unicorns and rainbows and say, yes, by all means, we ought to bring these people in, because I think that's instinctive. You know, we all want to help people. But I think the bottom line is that we have to be very smart about how to do this, if we're even coming to our doorstep. At this point, I'm not sure that it has. But if it does, I think we need to take a very measured approach, assess the needs of these kids coming in, make sure that we can accommodate them, because, you know, there are other districts in the state who might be able to handle them. It doesn't always have to fall onto the shoulders of West Hartford. We are a diverse community. We are very proud of that. But just because we are a diverse community doesn't mean that we have to shoulder all the burdens of the world. There has to be some shared sharing of burdens with others. And I would say that would be the approach that I would take with regard to those kids coming to Puerto Rico and elsewhere.
Thank you. Cheryl, would you like to comment?
Yes, I appreciate all those views, but it seems to me that there is one clear answer, and that is that every child who lives in West Hartford for however long is a child in West Hartford and gets education. That's just how it is. We have homeless children in West Hartford, they get education. If there are children who come from Puerto Rico and live in West Hartford, even if it's for a week, even if it's with a family member or a friend, they get education because they're in West Hartford. That's how we do it. And as the superintendent said, every child in West Hartford gets an education. And so even if it costs us a lot, and that would be a real problem, I admit, we don't have any choice. We educate every child who lives in our town, no matter how long they live here. Okay. Deb?
Poland?
I want to associate my remarks with Cheryl's and just add that not only do we want to accept any students into our town who are moving here from any other place, but we also want to make sure that the families are connected to the services that they need to help them make a home here. Even if it's not short term, let's have them come forever if they want to make West Hartford their home. I think that people will find West Hartford to be a very welcoming community. I think that many people from Puerto Rico do have a lot of family members in this area. Let's have them come here and make them feel welcome as they should.
Can I rebut or
You
say
may.
something?
Yeah, 30 seconds.
I don't know if I misunderstood the question. I mean, obviously, if they're here, then we should educate them. But it was my understanding is should we tell them to come here, or should we advocate for them to come here? Because I agree, once they're here, that's our responsibility. And this is again goes to the all things to all people. We simply can't afford it. So we can try to say that it's a great idea, that it's the right thing to do, and I don't disagree with it. I think if we had an endless pot of money, then we would certainly say, bring them all in. But that's the thinking that needs to change. We can't be everything to everyone, and we have to start budgeting in a way that we're going to be serious about that.
Thank you all. The next question will go first to Lorna. How do you envision handling declining school enrollment over the coming years?
My first response is wanting to explore why is that the case. I think that certainly means connecting with persons in the community or persons who may formerly were in the community and no longer, try to get a sense of why are they no longer here, why is the enrollment declining. I think that sometimes those things can happen by natural occurrence, whether it be a splurge of new births or maybe a splurge of people who graduated and gone on to college. I think it more so it requires us to get more answers before I can just give a candid answer to that. But I think it's something for us not to minimize the importance of it. If we continue to see a steady decline over time, that certainly is something for us to address because we know that young people soon will be our leaders of tomorrow. So if the population of younger persons continues to decline, well, that's going to impact all of us in the long run. So I think certainly having more discussion, trying to get a sense of why is the enrollment declining, and then once we have more insight into that, trying to address how can we respond to it in a proactive way, where we're not going to be having a conversation 10, 20, 30 years from now saying, uh-oh, who is going to lead us tomorrow?
Jay, do you have anything?
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, I'm all about drilling into root causes. I can probably think of several reasons why we might see declining enrollment in this poor economy that we've been experiencing for the past 8 years or so. I definitely think that there has been a sense that West Hartford has become expensive for people. That's just some hypotheses, though. I'm just throwing them out there. But as far as what we do about them once you're here, I think it's pretty apparent. You have what I like to call a peanut butter decline across the district. There isn't one decline in any one specific school. So it's not as though we're going to look at one school and say, aha, we're going to be able to shut that one down. I think with the decline in enrollment that's spread evenly across the district, you're going to see gradual decreases in class sizes. And hopefully, what we just saw this past week at the last Board of Education meeting where Tom Moore, or actually Chip Ward presented that our numbers declined, but not as precipitously as originally thought. Hopefully, we'll see a little bit of an arrest in that decline, and hopefully we won't have to go down a path of increasing class sizes or shutting down school. Those are things that nobody wants to hear, and I can imagine people's guts churning right now, and I'm with you on that. I'm not a fan of that either. But I think that when you look at the economics of it, and you consider what this district is paying, and the number of students and teachers it has to support, I think it's only a fair question that if enrollments decline to that point, it has to be a conversation that the district has to have.
Thank you. Ms. Greenberg?
I know it will come as a surprise to partisans, but I actually completely agree with Jay. I do. If families with kids the number of families with kids have declined across Connecticut, and they declined in West Hartford, I think partly because the cost of living is high both in Connecticut and in West Hartford. I think we do have to address that in general. But we've seen this for years. The administration has been addressing this. They have charts. They've been figuring this out all the way through the years. And so, for example, last year we were able to shrink the faculty and the student body in general, just because of regular declining enrollments. So part of this is actually a savings, and we're buying into that. The other option, of course, is to increase room for open choice and other partner programs, and we're looking into that too. So yeah, if there's a dramatic change in one particular place, we're going to see it. Otherwise, we're going to see smaller classes, perhaps fewer classes per grade, and maybe more other kinds of students as time goes by.
Thank you. Debbie Coleman?
Sure, I'll just add that I think it's important to look at enrollment on the long term and not just 1 year over the next, but maybe every 5 years or so to examine enrollment trends. We know that during a recession, people have fewer children, and so that's what we're seeing now, that from the recession from 2008, we have fewer babies were born over those couple of years. And that is completely normal. We see a lot of peaks and valleys with births if you look across all of the data sets. In the past, West Hartford was not as thoughtful as they possibly could have been when they saw declining enrollment, and they actually closed a school, which I think was later regretted by some people. So we want to make sure that whatever is done in a very thoughtful, planful way, looking not just at the next couple of years, but at the long term.
Thank you. Mr. Giovanni?
Well, I don't think we have to think about this as a future thing because it's happening right now. We're seeing declining enrollment right now. We need to think right now for what's going on. The reason this is happening, I disagree. I don't know so much that it's the number of kids people are having. West Hartford is no longer affordable. Let that sink in. West Hartford is no longer affordable. I'm a real estate broker in town. I hear it all the time. Taxes are off the charts. Fees, expenses, pay to play, everything is going up. So people aren't going to want to stay in town. It isn't so much that it's declining because of those kind of things. They're going other places, folks. We've got to get the affordability, and we have to get the budget under control. It's out of control.
Thank you very much. We're going to start our next question in Spanish.
Por favor, describa cómo enfoca su trabajo como miembro de la Junta Educativa. ¿Cómo ve su relación laboral entre la Junta Educativa, el Consejo de la Ciudad y el público? ¿Cómo recoge información? ¿A quién consulta? ¿Cómo interactúa con los miembros de la Junta? Please describe your approach to your work as a member of the Board of Education. How do you view the working relationship between the Board of Education, the Town Council, and the public? How will you gather information? Who will you consult? How will you interact with fellow board members?
This question goes to Jay Sarson first.
It's a multi-part question. Well, let's stipulate first that it's really not work. It's a volunteer effort. Work implies that you get paid for this, and I assure you all that we do not get paid for this. But as far as how we approach our working relationship with the town council, I think that our relationship with the town council is fairly strong. I think that for the most part we are in basic agreement on broad issues, but I still think that there are some areas of disagreement that we've had with the town council. Last year, if you all recall, the town council asked the Board of Education to excise an additional $300,000 from our budget cuts, and that was a direct reflection of our inability, in their eyes, as a Board of Education, to come to grips with the economic reality. Even they said you've got to get another $300,000 out. But I still think that, by and large, the relationships are good. There really isn't a bone of contention as there is in some towns. I know that the administrations work very well together between Tom Moore and Matt Hart, the new guy. I keep thinking about him, I'm assuming that the relationship will be good. But what were the other parts of the question? I kind of lost it.
How will you gather information? Who will you consult? I think you answered it.
Right, yeah, I think that we all know where to go to. Chip Ward is pretty central. Chip serves both masters pretty well, and if we need information, we can go to Chip Ward.
Thank you. Ms. Greenberg?
I hate to sound boring, but I agree with Jim. I will add a couple of things, though. The Board of Education does not have a budget. We ask for money, and the council gives it to us. Where we agree, and I think Jay's absolutely right, is that they prioritize education. We obviously prioritize education. And so we work very well in that sense, unlike many towns where there's a lot of pressure from the town council to cut education funding. The other thing that I want to say is how we work on the board, and at least in my experience. There are certainly divisions among board members. Sometimes that's partisan. Sometimes actually it's male versus female. Sometimes it's random. It's really quite bizarre. But my point is that we are not, by and large, operating as a partisan body. And we work very hard, I think, to find mutual solutions. And that's partly because we actually all agree that the schools really are a priority. And while we may differ on one particular program or something else, it's really within a framework of agreement. The third thing I just want to say is that the Board of Education does not have as much power as people think it does. We can ask for a budget, but we don't necessarily get it. We can hire and fire the superintendent, but we can't, for example, get involved in school policies directly or curriculum or something like that. So we are an advisory board in some sense, and I think we all take it very seriously and work very hard together to move forward.
Thank you. Paula?
How I approach my work on the Board of Ed is how I approach everything in my life, and that is I'm a collegial person, I think creatively, I'm pragmatic, so I like to think about what might actually work, but that doesn't mean that I don't have a vision for things as well. I don't have a problem taking smaller steps if that's what's needed in order to get there. But I want to spend my time on this question talking about the piece regarding engaging the public and town council in the work of the board. I'm really excited about the idea of civic engagement. And those of you who came out tonight, I appreciate your being here. And those of you who are watching live or later on, I appreciate your watching, because getting the input of the people who live in this town is the most important part of the work of the Board of Education. One thing I'd like to do is I'd like to have Board of Ed meetings rotate around, so they're not always at town council, but they're where people feel comfortable going. We could have a Board of Ed meeting right here in this auditorium at Charter Oak, or at any of the other schools in town. And people might feel more comfortable coming because it's where they already feel at home every single day. I'd like to have roundtable discussions about certain programs, not just at budget time when we're talking about which programs to save and which ones to cut, but all the time. That's one of the ways that I would like to involve the public in the work of the Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Levine.
I would look forward to working with everyone on the board, collegially. One way I'd be different is going into the schools. I mean, I have three school-age children there already. My wife is a teacher, so I hear plenty just not going anywhere, just staying home about what's going on in the schools. But I would like to do more reach out. I mean, obviously, talking to administration, the superintendent is key. But I do think it helps to kind of get out on the front lines and talk to the people that actually are doing the job and are there day in and day out, and then bringing that information back and sharing it with the board as a whole. I think the more information we get from the people actually doing the jobs will really help translate into not only the type of programs and policies that the board should be either advocating or supporting, but also getting back to the findings about, well, how are we getting the best bang for the buck for our money? Because sometimes I think you can maybe get too far removed when you're just sitting in a budget room with administration and management people versus actually talking to teachers on the ground and like, yeah, this math interventionist or this reading program really made a difference, and if we could do a little bit more of that, that would really make an impact on our student outcomes. Because for me, it's all about student outcomes. I'd much rather see that money go right into the school and look at, again, how we could potentially cut back on money is being spent administratively or in supervisory roles.
The way that I plan and hope to have the opportunity to interact and engage, I very much firmly believe in open lines of communication. And I think it's first important to maintain open lines of communication within the board itself. If there is a gap in communication or ineffective communication within the board, well, that's going to translate into how we interact with the population and community at large. I am someone who's very big on being honest. I many times tell persons I like to keep it real. Even though there may be a time I may say something you don't like or you may not want to hear, it comes from a good place. And that's why I feel we need to interact with each other, knowing that we are here representing the town. We're not here just for our own agenda. We're here to be the voice for the children here, to be a voice for the parents here. And this goes into the second piece. I think that's where it's important for us to know we must interact with everyone who is here. All of the families, all of the parents. I very much believe that it takes a village to raise a child. So it's not just about thinking linearly. You have to think at a more community-based level. That means hearing what your thoughts are, hearing what your concerns are. If we think that it's something that we should move forward with, well, so be it. But if it's something that may need to take a different direction, at least your voice was heard. It very much is important for everyone's voice to be heard. So being a part of the board, I think, means you must lead by example. So if we're going to ask for our young people to learn a certain way in school or to exemplify certain behaviors, well, we must practice that ourselves. Even with us being here tonight, someone may say something that I may not really agree with. I'm going to respectfully listen and then respond. We teach others by modeling. Thank you.
I just want to follow up with all this and let everyone know that, you know, the focus of the question for me was between us and town council, but certainly among the board. Most of you probably don't know this, but Mark Zanowitz and I, the other Republican on the Board of Ed, and Mark Overmeyer Velasquez, we get together about every 8 weeks or so and just talk board business, and we all listen to one another. I think that's important, and we're anticipating that Cheryl's more of a pancake fan, so we'll have pancakes with Cheryl as we go along. But the key is that we all do speak to one another on a variety of issues as we go along.
All right, thank you. For this next question, we're going to have it asked we're going to ask it in English and in Spanish, and there will be a summary of the response of each candidate immediately after that candidate speaks, gives his answer or her answer in English. Okay. How do you want to address the achievement gap in this district?
¿Cómo quiere usted tratar la diferencia de progreso en el distrito?
This question goes first to Cheryl Greenberg.
Thanks. First of all, there are two kinds of achievement gaps. Just to be clear, the state identifies achievement gaps as gaps between students with special needs, low-income, free-reduced lunch students, and English is the second, as speakers of English to speakers of other languages. And those achievement gaps are real, and that's one set of challenges. The other achievement gap, which is the one that we often talk about as the board too, is differences between, say, white and African American and Hispanic children. And both of those are real gaps and they really need to be addressed. And so far, the curriculum has been, we have scrutinized every aspect of the curriculum, not the board, I mean the administration with our help. Every aspect of the curriculum to make sure that it is inclusive in all sorts of ways, that it engages different people. We have tried different kinds of interventions to suit different learning styles, different backgrounds. We have worked on diversity among our teachers and our staff in order to bring these things together and create a diverse place for these kids to learn in. And in fact, we've started to see some small declines in the gap. They're still too large, any gap is too large, but we are trying to address it on as many different levels as we can.
Thank you, Carol. We'll have our translation.
Hay dos tipos diferentes en el progreso. Uno se reconoce el Estado y los estudiantes son parte de grupos específicos. El segundo es la diferencia entre grupos de diferente raza y de grupos culturales. Y la Junta Educativa ha analizado el currículum para asegurar de que recoge la diversidad.
And Deb Boland, the achievement gap is a tough nut to crack. This is an area where we've made slow but steady progress, but not quickly enough, in my opinion. There is no reason that children should not be learning and performing at the same potential, regardless of the color of their skin, the background in their homes, their family situation, and that's where our town needs to come together, both on the school side of things and town programs and programs run by social services agencies. I believe in educational equity, and that means that we need to provide the opportunities, the support, and the tools that students need in order to reach their potential. What that looks like for one person is going to be different than what that looks like for somebody else, and our teachers do a phenomenal job of identifying where those gaps are in people's home lives, in the technology that they have. We actually have a laptop loaner program at the high schools. Many people don't realize that, but I think it's very important to consider what people have in their homes for support, whether that's people support in their families or resources, and to try to meet those needs and using as many resources as we can, whether they are public resources or through nonprofits operating in our town. Thank you. Our translation.
Esta ciudad está definitivamente progresando, pero no lo suficiente. Y no hay ningún motivo para que estudiantes de diferentes grupos no puedan conseguir su máximo desarrollo. La igualdad es muy importante y destacamos que los maestros del distrito hacen un trabajo fenomenal. Por ejemplo, reconociendo las diferentes necesidades cuando se trata de los medios tecnológicos.
Thank you. Rob Vine.
My thoughts on the achievement gap are, I don't have the answer. But I would expect that we would think that any of us do. What I would like to do differently is, again, I'm just a big teacher fan, I guess, but I would go directly to the teachers and say, what do you need? Again, I think those are the frontline people we need to talk to, based on some conversations I've already had. Like, they're the ones that are dealing with this day in and day out. So if we really want to understand what's working well, what's not working well, we need to talk to them. I think it's always good to get an overview, working with our superintendents on this subject. But again, teachers are the ones that they're smart. They know what's going on out there. They're already working as hard as they can to close that achievement gap. I don't want to put any more burdens on them. What I would like to see us do is, like I said, talk to them and see what things they need. Again, like what I kind of referenced earlier, is looking for that program evaluation, that cost-benefit analysis. That's what we need to be doing more of, as far as how we're spending our town's dollars to best serve the student population. Talk to the teachers, look at the programs in place, figure out the ones that we need to expand based on the ones that are working, do away with the ones that aren't, and then go from there. That's what I would do.
I think that, first of all, it's a good thing that we recognize. Oh, I apologize. Excuse me.
No tengo una respuesta definitiva. Lo que necesitamos hacer es hablar con los maestros, preguntarles qué necesitan, averiguar qué está funcionando para saber cómo reducir la diferencia de progreso. Es necesaria también la conversación con el superintendente, pero definitivamente evaluar los programas y hablar con los maestros.
Lorna, now to return to respond.
Thank you. I do apologize before. I think in regard to the achievement gap, we certainly recognize that it is here, but I also believe it's really important for us to think of how we conceptualize or what our mindset is in regard to addressing it. I really believe it's important for us to know that all children have the potential to learn. And I think in regard to how students learn, there isn't always a cookie-cutter approach for it. There's something called multiple intelligences. It's getting a lot of more research and studies now that shows that there are different ways of evaluating someone's intellect. It's not always just based on a particular number. So in part, yes, I do think it is helpful to talk to the teachers who I respectfully disagree. I don't think that it's a burden on our teachers. I think that's what makes our town so wonderful, is our teachers are so invested in helping to educate our young people. The times that they spend with our kids, not only on the clock, but also after hours, coming to after-school programs, and meeting the children at their level, not just teaching at them, but teaching with them. That's important. But I also think it's important in touching base with young people to find out what works well for you. Some people may learn better through learning, through rather listening. Some may be more visual learners. So it's a combination of talking certainly with the teaching staff to see what their suggestions are in addressing challenges with the student population, those that may be falling behind, but also touching base with a young person and asking them, well, what works best for you? How are you better able to learn? How can I work with you? You want to meet a young person where they are, and then from there help to bring them up, because it's important for every person, every child to have the potential to learn, and we support that. Thank you.
Tenemos el enfoque de las inteligencias múltiples. Es necesario, desde luego, hablar con los maestros, que siempre hacen aún más de lo que se les pide, pero no olvidemos preguntarles a los estudiantes y que ellos nos digan qué es lo que mejor funciona para ellos.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mr. Sargent on this question.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure how much more insight I can add to this that my 5 panelists here have added. I will say that I think that a lot of the achievement gap can be eradicated through careful deployment of ESOL. I think a command of the English language definitely can mitigate many of the problems. Not all, but many of the problems that we see in our schools. But I do want to kind of step back a little bit and think about what we're all talking about here. And, you know, we're talking about closing an achievement gap. And, you know, when I hear that, I think to myself, well, we can deploy as many resources as we can, and it may be that sometimes, somehow, we're not going to get the outcome that we think. There are an awful lot of variables at play here with our children, and we have to do everything we can as a district to maximize their potential. We have to give them every opportunity to succeed and maybe even exceed expectations. But sometimes I get nervous that we're placing an unfair burden. In all due respect, I think we may be placing an unfair burden on our teachers by expecting them to close an achievement gap that may not be completely closable for all kids due to a variety of circumstances. We should all expect equal opportunity. We should get people to maximize their potential, but I think it would be foolish necessarily for us to assume that we are all going to have equal outcomes.
Can I just add something quick?
Ms. Greenberg?
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I forgot. The translation first. Lost track of my phone.
Tenemos que tener en cuenta que el grupo de estudiantes que están aprendiendo inglés es parte de un grupo definitivamente relevante para lograr esta diferencia de progreso, y el distrito desde luego tiene que dar la oportunidad a todos los estudiantes para que consigan desarrollar todo su potencial, pero debemos ser realistas y no se le puede exigir a los maestros que ellos resuelvan todo.
All right, Ms. Greenberg?
Sorry. Thanks. I just want to say that while we don't know all the causes, one thing that we did learn at the last board meeting is that much of the achievement gap is actually due to how much time children spend in the West Hartford schools. And so if you came recently, the achievement gap is actually larger. The more time that a child has spent in the West Hartford schools, the smaller the gap. And I just think it's important to say that already we are doing tremendous things in West Hartford if we are closing the gap with long-term students.
Mr. Levine?
I just want to clarify my burdensome comment. And my point is that I don't think as a board or anyone else should lord over teachers. They already know what is working and what isn't working in the classroom. So they're working daily already to close that achievement gap. And I'm loath to sit up here and suggest a new curricula or something that they should be doing from our perspective, unless it's been fully vetted by the teachers themselves, because they've already got a full plate. Like I said before, they know what they're doing. I just want to let them do their job.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to offer the opportunity for anyone in the audience to come to the microphone to ask a question. And if you have brought up a question, I'm happy to give it to you and you can ask it at the microphone.
I'd be happy to.
You have someone
I brought one.
Question right there.
My messy handwriting. That was a good idea. I was just wondering how you will support or even advocate for the improvement of environmental awareness in our schools. Keep in mind, many of these changes bring much needed cost savings, like reusable utensils, composting, taking food waste out of our cafeterias, out of the trash, and sending it to a facility where they can make use of the food waste. We can encourage children to grow their own food. That's an easier way to get food into the cafeteria, make improvements to the nutrition of meals. I spend a lot of time in the cafeteria, and I would welcome anyone to come with me, and there's so many prongs to this issue that you can learn about in the cafeteria. So thank you. How would you support or even advocate for the improvement of environmental programs and awareness in our schools?
Thank you. We begin with this question. This goes to Deb Pullman first.
I really want to thank you for bringing that question to our attention. It's not honestly something that I've thought that much about, but I really appreciate hearing those ideas. I know from my own children's experience that there are some schools in town that have started gardens of their own that are doing some work with recycling food or food waste. I'd really love to do more with that, including getting the science teachers involved and promoting environmental awareness and education to students at all levels. I think that's a great project for our schools to work on, maybe even from the ground up, if it were, through parent involvement, the PTOs, and any collaboration we can have with existing resources in the community. So thank you very much for bringing that idea forward.
And Mr. Levine.
Again, thank you. I think it's a great question, and I would be a big proponent of this because I'm all about environmental, especially when it can lead to cost savings. Because I think a lot of things you're referring to would do exactly that. And there are things already going on in schools too, so I would love to see them do something in the cafeteria to help with acoustics, because usually everyone hears me. But in all seriousness, like the garden stuff that's going on, my son just went on a 2-day field trip to winding trails where they did all types of things outside, environmental. I mean, there were a lot of games and things with team building. So I think there's a lot of things that go on. I've heard other people mention it in the past, and I think it's a great idea looking into like solar panels on the roof of buildings to help reduce our electric output. Many of the ideas that you think bring up are great ideas. So I would be someone to be an advocate for you. I love the idea of having people from the community doing exactly this, coming up, presenting an idea that maybe we aren't proposing on our own, and then letting us run with it as your representatives. I think that's kind of the job that we have as being true public servants. So then it's just getting a majority agreement here to say, yeah, this sounds like some good stuff. Obviously, we need to do the research to see how we can possibly implement it, what the potential cost savings or costs would be. But either way, looking at it and seeing like how we can get going on it. I love the idea.
I as well are very much in support of the idea. And I think it's important when we have new ideas to not just put them on the table, but then find a way to execute the plans. I can say here at Charter Oak International Academy, there is a group called Deep Roots that certainly speaks on that accord. They recently have made several changes within the inside of the building and also the outside of the building. In the cafeteria, we no longer have plastic utensils. We have metal utensils now. There's a compost that happens throughout the school. We have a garden as well. If you want to go get some fresh tomatoes, they're very tasty, you can go and pick them up as well. So I think, and that also has been done by the leadership of a parent here at Charter Oak. So I think it's important when you do that, to speak of ideas, it's also important to have someone who can help to carry through and following through those ideas. And we all benefit from that. In regard to cost savings, it certainly saves money. When you can go pick your own vegetables versus going to the grocery store, you're saving money. And it's also helping us in terms of nutritional value as well, and helping us in the long term as well, because we have to take care of our planet, we have to take care of our home. So I think that's an excellent question. I very much would be in support of that and would encourage others to do the same.
Thank you. Jay?
Sure. This question is sort of like, Jay, are you in favor of safe bridges? Why, yes, I am, as a matter of fact. I enjoy safety as I travel. And I certainly don't want to do anything that would harm the environment. And if there is a added benefit to it as far as our savings, then I become even more in favor of it. What I will say is that when efforts like this have bubbled up, and I'll point to 2013, the Growing Great Schools Initiative. I worked with those folks to get healthier chicken into the public schools, and we allocated extra money to it, and that was all well and good. But there's not enough evidence there to necessarily say that the needle has moved as far as lunch consumption. So that would be a situation where I'd say, well, let's let it ride for a little bit, let's see if we can market it a little bit better. But if there's a net cost to the school system, then I think you need to shut it down. So I'm all in favor of testing out new ideas, utensils and plates and all that. But if we run into it and we see that it's there's a net cost and the environmental benefit is not that great, then I think you've got to take a little bit of a deeper look at that. But just conceptually speaking, I think it's a good question. I think it's something that we can all probably benefit from.
Thank you. Carol?
I second everybody's enthusiasm, of course. But I just want to say, in addition to parents' involvement, particularly at the elementary school, we also have kids' own involvement. I know that when my girls were in Hall, there was the program about reusable water bottles and providing water coolers or something like that to refill your bottles so that you didn't have to keep buying plastic bottles of water, so that kids, when they're older, can themselves also get involved in these things. And I think it's important to support them as well as, of course, the parents. And I think the other advantage of that, which I'm sure everybody agrees, but people haven't mentioned, is that if we raise awareness in our kids of the importance of the environment, then they will carry that into adulthood. So it's not just a question of making Charter Oak a green building, which we did, or looking for immediate savings, all of which is true, or better nutrition, but also that we're teaching them the importance of that going forward when they become adults.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I just, Cheryl, you raised a great point about the refilling of the bottles, but that's a situation where you have to really look at the costs and the benefits of that. Obviously, there's the cost of the water flowing through our pipes, and there's the added cost of when, back in the day, Chip Ward said the district would make money hand over fist selling bottled water. Now, I get it. The more bottled water you sell, the more bottles there are to clog up our landfills and our recycling bins. I get that. But I think that's a problem that you have to acknowledge and recognize that there could be the law of unintended consequences there.
Thank you. Our time is starting to grow short, and we have quite a few questions. I'm asking the panel if it would be willing to do your response in 1 minute for the questions that we have remaining, so that we can get 2 or 3 questions more, okay? We have a person to come to the microphone.
Hello, I'm an open choice parent, and I wanted to speak. Basically, I've been an open choice parent for many years, and my kids have dealt with adversity and discrimination here in the district, not only because they're children of color, but also because they're coming in from Hartford. How do you plan on helping create more inclusion for our students?
This begins with Robert.
Thank you for the question. Again, my first reaction is to reach out directly to schools. I think it's unfortunate. I know there's programs already in place, like anti-bullying programs, if you see something, say something, those kind of things. But obviously there's always going to be things that fall between the cracks, which is not tolerable to me. So I think that's a discussion that we need to have at the local school level, individually within schools, and with principals, teachers, guidance counselors, maybe put together some sort of group task force and say, what can we do to address these ongoing issues? because obviously if it happens to even one kid, it's not acceptable. I've dealt with it in my past. I'm a father of a child with special needs, and to me, there should be zero tolerance policy for anything that happening in our district. So, unfortunately, it's something that's difficult to completely eradicate, but I think we need to stay on top of it by doing everything we can to keep in touch with everyone at the local level and make sure that everybody understands what the policy should be to try and keep that from happening going forward in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Ferguson?
I do thank you for your question. I think your question addresses something that's quite real. You're referring to yourself as an open choice parent. I'm a parent who resides here in this town, and I've had similar experiences as what you're talking about. So I think the reality is those types of issues do happen. So yes, the conversation can happen within the schools, but we also need to recognize that conversations need to happen at home. Children are not born with certain mentalities of talking about someone because of how they look. You learn those views from those persons that are caring for you. So again, we as adults have to step up and begin to model the behaviors we want our young people to practice. If we're talking about tolerance, in terms of accepting all persons, well, we as adults have to model that same level of mentality. And so the schools need to be a part of that discussion as well. So I think the discussion is one that needs to happen, not next week, not next month, even when you go home today, just to have that conversation. The more we have open lines of communication regarding these pieces, the less people see types of ignorances that you are speaking of.
Jay Sargent?
Yeah, we touched on this during our tape debate, and thank you for your question. I'm sorry you're having to deal with that. It's nothing that a parent should ever have to deal with. My belief is that the way to make people be more caring is to make them more empathetic. And I'm a firm believer that if everyone can understand what it's like to walk in another's shoes, they might have a different perspective about how to treat that person, maybe what to say to that person. I don't know if that has to be a part of, and I'm not sure what grade your children are in, so I apologize for that, but if they're in high school, maybe that's a part of orientation. It's a part of a broader understanding of, that there are different kids coming in with different backgrounds, and, they have the same goals and dreams and aspirations that you have living in a part of town that may not have so many open choice kids in it. So I truly believe that conversation, the development of empathy will go a long, long way to mitigating this issue.
Thank you. Ms. Greenberg?
I completely agree with what everybody has done. Sorry? Okay. I agree with what everybody has said, and I just want to add a couple of things. The first is that we could help more, I think, if we were able to have more programs that included kids from open choice more regularly. This is not up to us, unfortunately, but for example, if we had more transportation, then they could integrate more into after-school programs and things like that and not feel quite so isolated. That's a sort of structural issue. Secondly, of course, it is true that racism is everywhere in our society and other forms of discrimination, and we have to address it as a society, as families, as schools. That's absolutely true. But I want to underscore something that Jay said, which is that the schools, I think, have done a tremendous job of integrating children with special needs. Unified recess, unified arts, even into the classrooms, and that has made a tremendous difference with able-bodied children being able to understand and appreciate the gifts that other children bring.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman?
Well, there isn't that much more to add, but I do want to say thank you for trusting your children to the West Hartford Public Schools. I would say at the elementary school level, where there's still recess, we should focus on making sure that all children are included in activities at recess so that they feel a part of the school community the way that they should, and that the PTO can probably do a better job reaching out to parents and families and making sure that they feel a part of the community the way that they should. And I also want to amplify Cheryl's comments around after-school activities. I think when people play sports together, when they do music together, that's where friendships are really built. I've seen that with my children. I know you've probably seen that with your children. I'd really love to find a way to make that easier for our open choice students as well.
Thank you. Our next person's going to ask a question. We are getting low on time. I want to thank everyone who has come. We are going to take this question and one more. But I want to thank WHC-TV for all it has done to We are here with the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford and WHC-TV for the Town Council Candidate Debate. The League of Women Voters is pleased to be able to bring you this nonpartisan voter service in cooperation with West Hartford Community Television, and we thank the campaigns for their cooperation. My name is Janet Lenore, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford. I will serve as the moderator for this debate, one of two we will have with the Town Council candidates. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan but political organization that works to encourage informed and active participation in government. We hope this debate will serve as one piece of information you will use as you prepare to vote. This Town Council debate will be conducted in a modified cumulative time format. What this means is it's designed to help the candidates to freely elaborate on their approaches to a variety of issues, unimpeded by the strict time constraints of more traditional debate formats. Each candidate will have a total of 9 minutes response time during the debate. When speaking, each candidate is timed by his or her own League of Women Voters timekeeper, and we thank the timekeepers for coming here tonight. Periodically, the timekeepers will hold up signs indicating the amount of time remaining for each candidate. After each candidate has a chance to respond to a question, candidates are encouraged to rebut, responding to their differences as they perceive them, but understanding that the clock will be running. Each candidate has an additional 2 minutes for a closing statement. The order of closing was determined by lottery, as was the initial question that I will pose tonight. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the Town Council candidates who have committed their time and energies to this important aspect of the democratic process, running for elective office. The first candidate is Mary M. Fay. She is a resident of West Hartford for 15 years and is a financial services senior executive. She has held several senior business leadership roles, including Senior Vice President and General Manager of Sun Life Financial, where she has also chaired diversity and inclusion employee resource groups and served on Sun Life boards. Mary has also been Senior Vice President of GE Capital and Senior Vice President of ING. Starting out as a financial analyst, Mary has also held executive positions at the Travelers, Hartford Healthcare, the Hartford, and AIG. Mary was raised in East Hartford and attended public schools. She went on to graduate from Skidmore College and earned an MBA from Rensselaer Polytech Institute. Active in her community, Mary was appointed to the West Hartford Library Board and is a frequent volunteer at Morley School and is active in Save Our Water. Mary also serves on the Board of Overseers for Newton Wesley Hospital, is chair of the reviewing stand for the annual St. Patrick's Day Parade, and was named a top woman in business by Hartford Business Journal. Mary was an inaugural member of West Hartford's first Parent Leadership Training Institute, where she was elected class speaker. She is a member of the Irish American Home Society and Thistle Lawn Bowling Club and is a parishioner of St. Timothy's. Mary is married to Mary Smith, and together they have a 7-year-old daughter, Katie. Thank you, Mary, for being here tonight. Liam Sweeney is running for Town Council in West Hartford. Liam is a lifelong resident of West Hartford, where he attended Morley, King Philip, and Hall High School, and was captain of the Hall High basketball team. Sweeney is a graduate of Temple University. After graduating from Temple, he went on to work for Senator Dodd and other various federal, state, and local elected officials, and is now a principal at Penn Lincoln Strategies, based here in West Hartford. He is a founding board member of Active City, a nonprofit that helps to provide affordable sports recreation options for underprivileged children in the Greater Hartford area. Liam also participates in the West Hartford Public Schools mentoring program and is a parishioner at St. Patrick St. Anthony's Church. Sweeney and his wife Whitney live in the Morley School area with their son Rory. Liam is running to ensure equity in West Hartford through smart growth and business development, strong schools, and safe and welcoming communities.
Thank you, Lynn. Chris Williams is here to my left. Chris has been honored to serve on his hometown's town council these past 2 years. He has served on the finance and budget, public safety, and served as educational liaison subcommittees. Chris grew up in town, graduated from Conard High School, and is now raising his 2 children, Leela and Joey, in town with his wife Holly. He is a litigation attorney with the firm of Conway, Stoughton, which is also located in town. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Ben Winograd is to my right, and he is completing his first term on town council. There he serves as chair of community planning and physical services and on human services. A graduate of Wesleyan University and Northeastern University School of Law, as well as Duffy, Sedgwick, and Conard, Ben works for the American Federation of Teachers as a union representative. He is a member and former executive board member of Congregation Beth Israel, where he is best known for running community coffee on Sunday mornings. Ben lives on Lily Road with his wife Shannon and his daughter Sasha. His mom Marlene lives at Chatfield. So thank you, Ben, for being here.
Thank you.
Finally, Sherry Cantor is the mayor of her hometown of West Hartford. She is a member of the Yukon Board of Trustees, her alma mater. Sherry graduated magna cum laude with a BS in accounting and is a registered CPA. She has served as town councilor since 2004, deputy mayor since 2011, and as mayor as of May 2016. As a leader in the community, Sherry is committed to leading with honesty and integrity, including and valuing all voices in respectful dialogue and engaging people of all ages in shaping a caring, diverse, and dynamic community. So thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Earlier, we decided who would take the first question, and Ben, you won the draw. So we'll start with infrastructure. We all drive the roads here in West Hartford. What planning should our town council be involved in or doing to address present and future infrastructure needs? I struggle with the word, but I know what I'm saying.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you, of course, to the League of Women Voters for hosting this. My mom's a life member of the League and has served in the role that you're doing tonight of timekeeping and moderating. So thank you all, and also to, of course, West Hartford Community TV, a wonderful service. We actually do spend a lot of time on roads.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a long-term plan for how often we pave, obviously. I've heard a lot of complaints the last few weeks about every road's potholes, but you know, we do have a long-term plan, and we do a set amount of miles per year. What's really exciting about our roads is the Streets Initiative. You know, we are, every time we do any kind of paving, anytime we do any road project, and this was really the initiative of Sherry primarily, you know, we look to see whether or not we can improve access, safety, both for bicyclists, pedestrians, and cars. So we've been adding bike lanes, we've been doing safer intersections. Again, every time we do it, we don't just want to repave what we've done before, but we want to look and see whether or not we can make the town more walkable, more livable. And I think that's really been evident in the appearance of the town. And we're making the town into just a much more fun place to live in because of the infrastructure projects we've been doing.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Mary, the same question to you. With respect to infrastructure here in West Hartford, can you give us some guidance as to what you think that the town council should be planning and doing moving forward?
Certainly. Along the lines of what Ben just said, I would like to thank everybody for hosting us. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to a lively discussion. You know, roads and infrastructure are extremely important to West Hartford, and Connecticut, without a doubt. And I think things could use some improvement. I think we've done some great jobs. It's a very walkable city, which is what I appreciate about it. Lots of sidewalks. I think there's safety when kids walk to school, so a lot of good things are happening. I've been walking door to door, and a lot of the concerns that I've been hearing, and I think we need to address, is the speeding that goes on the roads. We have a lot of main thoroughfares. I happen to live near one on North Main Street, and people are concerned about the speed of cars, the safety of pedestrians, and of course bicyclists. I'll actually be out walking on October 4th with a community organizer who wants to do something. I know we've talked about a road diet, but it's probably becoming more critical.
A road diet, can you explain what that is?
Yeah, to address the safety concerns and to make them more walkable and pedestrian friendly as well as for bicyclists, there's ways that you can design roads and do different things to make the speeders, so to speak, slow down.
Okay.
I also think we can probably do some things with redesigning some of the main arteries to alleviate some traffic, which people are also talking about. You know, it takes a long time to get from Elmwood to the north end of town and from east to west, and perhaps we can start talking about ways to improve that down the road.
Going faster is not an answer.
Going faster is certainly
Okay.
not an answer.
All right, wonderful. Liam, how about you? What thoughts do you have for infrastructure here in West Hartford?
Well, I'd also like to say thank you to the league for having me here. But I think West Hartford has done a really good job over the long term. And if you look at other municipalities across the state right now, West Hartford is in really good shape in regards to where we all are. And I think one of the great things we've done is, I think particularly on Farmington Avenue, you've seen the town make steps to slow down traffic there by reducing the lane sizes. We've done a lot of work on the sidewalks. Obviously, there's always room to be made in that place, but I think the town really has made some very, very good progress in that reform. I also, like Mary, have been out hitting doors, and there are obviously always going to be some concern areas that have speeding or potholes and that sort of thing, but I think that's just part of the thing of being in a great thriving city that has such a involved electorate and community. People are going to give you feedback on the doors, and nothing's going to ever be happy. But I think Sherry and folks have done a really good job of trying to address everyone's infrastructure concerns while also trying to keep the budget balance, and also while dealing with the potential lack of funding coming from outside sources as well. So I think in general we could always do a better job, but I think right now in regards, if you look at West Hartford, is one of the best places to live in the country, as you've seen by so many different magazines and publications. But I think it's really, I think we're really in the right direction, but I'm always open to new ideas of how to make it better.
Okay, excellent. How about you, Chris? Do you have any thoughts to expand upon this?
Sure, Janet. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Won't belabor the point. But yeah, I think that in terms of infrastructure, I think everything comes back ultimately to our budget, right? So right now we have a $285 million budget in town. We have exponential tax increases year after year. We have not fundamentally addressed, I think, a lot of the underlying collective bargaining issues that we have with our collective bargaining units. And so what you're going to see moving forward is less and less money being spent on things like infrastructures. When I go door to door, what I hear about is concerns about the roads. I hear concerns about the physical structure of the schools. There haven't been repairs on the exterior, things like that in our fields. And unless we can sort of fundamentally change our budgeting year to year, we're going to have less money for things like infrastructure. So when I hear the term infrastructure, that's where I go, Janet.
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned buildings, too, because that's something, I started out with roads, but Sherry, can you expand a little bit on
Absolutely. We've been very committed to investing in all of our public buildings over time, and it's been very measured and planned, so we don't have these deteriorating, deferred maintenance situations and then have to have major construction. We actually have done a lot of work with energy efficiency, with dual transfers over from oil to gas, and many the digital monitors, and lots of work has been done on that, so we can save money with our budget. We also have done a lot of work with with grants. We've done a Greenway project, which is primarily paid for through grant money. We actually received a very substantial grant. I actually drove with our U.S. senators to the interchange, 84 interchange, on a very, very big job that will be done there. So we work really hard to try to maximize tax dollars, have them go in responsible ways, and work with the state and federal government to get what we can to improve our infrastructure.
Well, I'd like to hear that, because with the budget not being decided by the state yet, and us facing perhaps lack of state funding, we definitely need to find some way to come up with some money to pay for the things we'd like to have continue and the new things that we'd like to have in the future. Liam, would you care to comment on without state funding, how can our town address the budget shortfall that we're anticipating?
Without the state budget?
Without the state funding,
Well,
correct?
I mean, I don't think any municipality in the entire state could deal without state dollars. I mean, right now, all municipalities depend heavily upon the state for that. And that's just the way that we've been structured. So the idea that our municipality is any different than anyone else at this point in this juncture is just something that's not a fact out there. Every municipality in the entire state is in the same situation that West Hartford is in. Obviously, there are other places. I think West Hartford is actually in a better place than most municipalities when it comes to that, in the sense that, you've heard from surrounding communities that their lights will turn off in the next time. And West Hartford is not in that place. And I think that goes to a credit to the folks at this table who have done such a good job planning for that. I think a lot of that goes to Mayor Cantor in regards to getting ready for that. I think building for that. I think we've had a lot of community discussions on that, a lot of feedback from the community of how the town can prepare for that. I think this last budget, the Democrats definitely worked on a collaborative way to hear from folks on how the community can do a better job of spending its money, and I think they've done the best they can. And no one can prepare for a $25 million cut if that's what we're hearing out there. But in regards to how the town can go without state funding, I think that's not the way municipalities are set up in Connecticut. It depends so much on state money. So.
Yeah. No, it is. It's very difficult. But we are anticipating that, right, Chris? And you were going down that road when we were talking about infrastructure.
Absolutely.
So care to comment on the budget?
Sure, absolutely. So what happened during this last budget cycle was that since January, Governor Malloy has been screaming at the top of his lungs that the town would not receive municipal funding to the level that it had in past years. So the town council, I think, took some steps in anticipation of that, but I don't think that the majority went far enough. What they did was they assumed $7 million less than we have received in past years, and they factored that into the budget. That was based upon, at the time, representations and understanding from the state delegation. They also assumed that the collective bargaining units moving forward that will be in negotiations next year would take a pay freeze without a guarantee of that. What I said, what I thought should have happened is that it was an opportune time for the town to deal with some of the fundamental structural issues we have moving forward. Everyone complains, many people complain, rightfully so, about the fact that the town budget has gone up $127 million, or 80%, since the Democrats have taken over. It's a huge number. At the same time, population has stayed flat. School enrollment has gone down. It was time, given the fact that the governor was saying no money, there's no more. We should have sat down, I think, with our partners in our collective bargaining units and demanded that we can, for their sake as well as ours, create a relationship that was sustainable moving forward. Because what we have is not that. Okay. And I think we missed that opportunity. And because of it, in that only $7 million assumption, that there are no good choices left.
Okay. That kind of leaves us between a rock and a hard place. So Sherry, how would you respond to that?
So I think we actually have addressed a lot of structural issues, and this is a little history and a little bit in the weeds. But in the 90s, there were no payments made to the pension plan, and not only were there no payments made to the pension plan, there were no employee contributions made to the pension plan. So when I came on board in 2004, we had made the first contribution. The plan was over 100% funded because of double-digit inflation. That was a function in the 90s. And when I came on board, there was we started with about $1 million contribution. Now we are paying almost $22 million a year in that pension contribution. Most of that is for it's for employees that have already earned their time, and there's nothing we can do about that particular situation without meeting that debt obligation and that liability. But what we have done is we've negotiated since 2006, eliminating overtime in our pension contribution, eliminating moving most of our employees to a hybrid plan, which is largely defined contribution, a very small defined benefit piece to it. So our defined benefit plan would also be healthy because we needed money coming in. In the meantime, we also reduced our headcount. So we had less people paying into the plan, which also made that situation worse. So there are major structural issues that have projected us in a way where we have had to build up, being a AAA bond rated community, being responsible for past mistakes, where we've had to commit to doing that with that kind of discipline, and we have committed to that while we've negotiated and decreased liabilities down the road. So we're 128th out of 169 towns in per pupil spending. We have combined every job in school and school and town administration. One of the few communities in the state to do that. We've remained a AAA bond-rated community during very tumultuous times. So I think that we have been extremely responsible, and we are prepared to deal with a severe cut from the state. $7 million. We cut $5 million from our proposed budget. We took a $7 million contingency. We also have some other money set aside from surplus. So we're prepared. We don't think that our community that has been run so efficiently and effectively should be punished for the way we have done such a good job. We have the highest reserve levels we have ever had. So we're in a good place to weather some change. I'm not promoting that you cut us to that extent, because I think we've done things right and we should be used as an example.
I think everybody would agree we don't want to punish our town,
Right.
but we are trying to anticipate what the state might do. So what thoughts do you have to share, Mary?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think a couple. I think we've known what's happening with the state and Hartford as well, and I think it pains everybody. Nobody wants to see our state in distress or Hartford on the brink of insolvency. But they're all kind of have common elements. And it's all this gigantic pension liabilities that are on the books of all, the state, Hartford, and quite frankly, West Hartford. So I applaud some of the progress that's been made, but this is kind of my expertise. I've run pension businesses and retirement businesses and healthcare businesses, and even though we've made some progress, we did go from 110% funded, and I think it was 2002, and now we're down to 42% funded, and we're making basically the minimum payments, which are about $20 million. So we've somehow got to figure out a way to crack that nut, whether it's some actuarial assumptions need to be revised or our discount rate or whatnot, but that needs to be an area of focus because we've seen this movie, right? We've seen the state fall into this and get distressed, and we've seen Hartford fall into this. So that's a number one thing, because like everybody else, we love West Hartford and we want to put the money into infrastructure, we want to put the money into schools, the things that we're known for, the things that make us a number one community. Having it go into these liabilities is really a drain on us, and we've got to figure out a way to get there. The second thing I would say is, I know the state budget, it's very difficult, but we've got to find a way to come together. There was a proposal on the table where West Hartford could get their funding back. And I wish that our leaders who represent us in West Hartford fought harder for that. I think it's hard for us. We want to be town officials, or I'm aspiring to that. The rest of you are town officials with the exception of Liam. We can only do so much. We're trying to manage the town and advocate for the town, but we have to rely on the people who are at the state level to help us. And I see that as a bit of a disconnect, and it would have been nice if we had gotten better at that big $23 million gap.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you. Ben, we haven't heard from you on this issue.
No, I get to follow some great answers. Let me start off by just saying I work around the state. I'm familiar with many towns over the years that I've worked with. And I just got elected, so I assumed that West Hartford was a well-run place. That was our reputation. It wasn't until I actually started serving that I could see how incredibly well-run we are. I've seen mismanagement of various sorts all over the state. We don't have it here. This is, and certainly anytime recently, the most well-run town, and it shows. There's a reason why we have both an incredible quality of life and AAA ratings from all the bond agencies. We're unique among that. Other towns that have AAA ratings are in Fairfield County or towns that have far less economic diversity than we do. We're doing something right. And when you talk about the pension, yes, it was very low funded. There were people who came into office and promised that there would be zero taxes. And well, how do you get zero taxes? You take it away from the pension. It's a really easy solution, and it works, and it's very good politically in the short term. But what it left us was a hole that the Democrats have been working for years to fix. And the proof of the efficiency of that plan is that we're still AAA rated, despite having a really low funded pension. I mean, 40% is, 43, whatever we are, that was lousy. Except that they've seen our plan, and they're confident in our ability to get it done. So I think that's something we need to be proud of. And again, it's really proof of what we're doing right. One other comment in terms of in the efforts being made to fight back against the budget. Yes, we all know that Malloy's original budget had a huge cut for West Hartford as well as other towns. You'll note that when his revised one, even from the governor, reduced that cut significantly. The two failed plans in the legislature each did us far better. That's a result of exactly the kind of work that was done primarily by our mayor. Was up at the Capitol fighting for West Hartford, and we had an impact. And as a result of that, nobody's talking in terms of the budgets that are out there. No one's talking about the kind of draconian cuts we were originally being faced with. So I think we've done our job. We've put ourselves in a much better position to handle the state cuts, and when they come, we've got, as well as possible, as Liam said, a $24 million cut is impossible to deal with. And how do you plan for something that horrible? But what we are more likely to face is something that I think we can do. And if it is a bigger cut than we expect, we'll do what we've done in the past, which is pay our bills, be responsible, and put ourselves in the best position possible for the future.
Okay, well, it sounds like on both sides of the fence, we're trying to plan ahead, and that's a good sign.
Janet, can I just make
yeah,
one
absolutely,
final comment
please.
on that? I think the issue is whether or not we have cuts this year and how much from the state. The point is the state is out of money. And so next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, West Hartford is not getting money to the levels that it has, to the levels that its current agreements are predicated upon. So we have to fundamentally change how we operate, because unless we do, every year we're going to look at shortfalls of $20 million or so. And in terms of the AAA bond rating, it's a wonderful thing. It's a great thing. But, our mill rate is 41.04. That puts us in league with Norwich, New London, New Haven. Think about the economic vibrancies of those towns, whether West Hartford wants to share it. If certain things go wrong with the state funding, our rainy day fund is essentially going to have to be rated, and there goes the AAA bond rating. So it's good we have it, but it's hanging in the crosshairs right now. And depending upon the way what the state does, it may be gone. And that's going to be the case year after year after year until we fundamentally change how we operate.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Care to rebut?
Well, I will. I think we constantly change the way we structure. We have done smart growth planning and creative development planning to bring in revenue to fund our schools and our public safety. We are, again, 100. When I went to school at Hall High School a long time ago, I won't tell you what year I graduated, we were #1 in per pupil spending. We have 70 languages spoken in our schools. We have 22% free and reduced lunch. We have 42% minority population in our schools. It's a much different school population than when I went to school. We're 120 out of 169 because we've changed the structure. We continually change the structure in how we deliver public works, public safety, the way we actually improve our infrastructure. We have streamlined with other utilities to do things so much more efficiently. We spent, our debt has decreased by 10% over the last 10 years. And our employee headcount has decreased 10% over 20 years. We have changed. We will continue to change. You can't do it in a year. It is like turning a barge. When those pension agreements were made, nobody thought people were lived to 80, 90 years old, and then the lack of funding was critical to the structure. But we are determined not to destroy the community while we make these structural changes.
Good. I love to hear about the cooperation you were talking about, because it kind of leads me into the next question. And Mary, are there opportunities for us to work with other towns? We mentioned Hartford, we mentioned East, we mentioned a lot of towns. Ben mentioned that he travels around and we compare favorably to other towns. But what can we do to work with other towns and perhaps streamline, if possible?
So I think what you're getting at is regionalization or county government. And I guess a couple observations. I've lived in county where it's worked. And what I've seen, that was in Virginia. And what I've observed is that it works really, really well where there's widespread population. So there's lots of people in rural areas, and you kind of pull them together so they don't have to have a superintendent and police force in every single solitary little town, which might have 2,000 or 3,000 people. It can work there. But even when they did that in Virginia, they left the major metropolitan areas like Richmond, or Alexandria or the DC metro area as standalone cities running, because the needs are so different between those populations and the things that you have to cover. So it pains us to see Hartford in the situation that it is. I think all of us want to see Hartford succeed, but I'm not sure the way we're structured in our denseness of population, 3.7 million people in such a small area, that you can completely move to regionalization. I think if we designed Connecticut today with a white sheet of paper, we weren't built the way we were, maybe. But I'm not sure that works. But if you're asking about trying to help Hartford, we are. 50% of their revenues come from Connecticut, which, guess what? It's all of us as taxpayers. So I think we all are trying to fund Hartford to succeed. Regionalization, it depends on how you describe it. Does it mean that you combine Hartford, West Hartford, East Hartford, Bloomfield, the greater metro area, and you've got kids going to schools all over the place? I think that's going to be problematic because you're taking your child out of their neighborhood and, you know, it's a long day for them. So there probably are some opportunities that we could perhaps identify, whether it's some backroom things like payroll or maybe sharing some library systems or like that. But I think it would be very hard with a densely populated area, with the financial situation and distress of Hartford. We can't keep pouring money into Hartford and thinking things are going to change without some systemic changes to the way the city is run and the way their financials are structured.
Okay, appreciate that. Ben, Liam, care to comment?
I mean, I think the Greater Hartford area already does some of these collaborations. I think I mean, I think what Mary was saying about the schools, we already do that. We have the chef ruling, so we already have regionalization in regards to our schools, in the sense that we have kids going from West Hartford to Hartford and vice versa, and from Simsbury to West Hartford. We have kids coming into our town, which we do a great job. We educate kids from outside of the school district. I think we also are part of a regional system that deals with the public health as well. So I think there's already stuff that's out there. I think the state, I think to Mary's point, is that we have 169 different little towns, and I think that if we did this all over again, I think we'd probably rethink that idea. But I think West Hartford, works pretty well, and we are such a large community. We're called a town, but we're so big, right? Now we've grown to a very large area. Some people would consider it a city at this point. And we're providing, and I think Sherry talked about this, our school system has completely changed. We're providing new services all the time, But I think one of the main things that West Hartford does such a really good job, particularly in education, is it's special ed. People move here for special education. As someone who worked in leisure services here, we provide a service to the Greater Hartford area. I know families that moved here to live in this town, whether they were just moving here for K through 12, but they moved here for those services that we provided them, and we continue to do so. And I think it's been really great that this body has worked really well to ensure that those services which are so important. I mean, I know everyone here has someone that's close to them that has a child with special needs. There's so much that those parents go through, and this town does such a great job doing that. I think that's one thing that I think we serve the region in that, and so people come here for those services. And I think we continue to put the emphasis forward. I think Ben touched about this. It's like we are a community that cares about people, and we will always put people first. And I think that's a major thing that we do a really good job about.
Ben, how about you? Any opportunities you see?
So I think that we always have to be creative and look for those opportunities. And we're elected to represent West Hartford. We need to do what's in the best interest of West Hartford. But we should always be looking to see, in a particular idea, is there a way to work with other towns or cities to figure out a better way to do it to save some money? So for example, I'll give an example that didn't work, but we looked at it, which was under state rules, we had to do better street sweeping, called MS4, which is really getting in the weeds. But basically, we had to do a better job for environmental purposes of sweeping the roads and of cleaning the drains. And we had to purchase pretty expensive equipment for it. So when that came up in my committee, my first question was, can we share those machines with other towns? Mm-hmm. Now, it turned out that the amount of work we were going to have to do would mean that we were going to be using those trucks pretty much constantly. They're always being used. There is no opportunity in that instance to share it, but that's the kind of thing we have to think about. If we have equipment that other places could use, we rent it out, whatever else, and we buy it together. And I do think we should always be looking for those opportunities. I think the town is. I think our new town manager that we worked to get hired, and we think did a great job of hiring him, that he's also looking for those kind of efficiencies. Of course, we want to work with other towns, again, to serve all our residents better. But we have to keep our eyes open.
Excellent, excellent. Sherry, any last comments?
We do have a regional water board, that Metropolitan District Commission, that's set up like a municipality. And again, when you are in a region, and I think we have to view ourselves as a region of Hartford, we all have strengths and weaknesses that we can build on. We all have to be very, very careful that we have the leverage and the voice at the table when we're in a regional body, because it can hurt our residents if we don't.
Great. I'm glad we're taking those opportunities. That's wonderful. Great. Speaking of opportunities, are there any opportunities to bring millennials into our town, new corporate tax base maybe, something like that? What kind of opportunities can we bring into our town?
I would love to talk about that, because this has really been a focus of mine. Okay. So I have 4 sons, all millennials. And my oldest son actually is newly married and married 2 months, and lives in town. And you are a millennial, so are you a millennial? I don't even know. But anyway,
I think so.
So millennials are the largest generation in U.S. history. And I always thought it was the baby boom, but it's not. It's millennials, are 90 million. And they are into the shared economy, and they are more transient than ever. They stay in, they've been delayed in buying homes. West Hartford actually is positioned very, very well. They love vibrancy, as disconnected as they are on their devices. They love to be together and be able to participate socially. They love walking too, and they're very, very physically fit. I mean, Morgan Stanley did this very, very detailed study, and I've done a lot of reading on it. And we are actually very aligned. Our transportation-oriented development is also very geared towards millennial living. We've added hundreds of apartments online, having urban centers, and not just West Hartford Center, but Park Road, New Britain Avenue, Bishop's Corner. Having those centers that people live around are all wonderful things. We're doing some work to parks to also make them a little bit more friendly and contemporary. We zoned in our industrial zone, not only for apartments, but also for brewery. So anyway, I'm using up my time, but we're positioned very, very well to attract, and we are.
And it's time to be used,
yes,
to answer the questions. Some thoughts on this, Chris?
Sure, Janet, thanks. What I would say is, I think as a millennial, I'm not sure, I think everything the mayor said is spot on in terms of overall what attracts millennials, but I do think fundamentally the most important issue would be affordability, especially for that millennial who is looking to settle down. And I do know for a fact that West Hartford and its property taxes and the rate at which they're going up makes it difficult for young people to purchase that first home in our town. And so while what the mayor says is accurate about pedestrian friendly and people wanting more of an urban-suburban mix, if not more urban, and West Hartford certainly has that. And we're also at the mercy of the state. I mean, the state is throwing every job that it can possibly out of the state. I mean, that's not West Hartford's fault. But in terms of West Hartford specifically, the more affordable we make it, the more likely we are to have families stay here, young people invest here, which is good because we want our schools filled, we want people to raise their family. My family, I grew up in town, Liam grew up in town, we used to play basketball together, and we stayed here, probably because we love the town. And there would be more of us if West Hartford was not as expensive as it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mary, any thoughts on maybe corporate redevelopment that we could bring in, or?
Yeah, a couple comments. First of all, millennials are awesome. I have a lot of nephews and nieces who are millennials. They're very creative. They have different approaches to how they do things. We need to have them. They're our future. Baby boomers like me, we're aging out of the workforce, and seniors, we know that they're not really contributing ongoing to the economy because they're no longer working. No fault of theirs, but they're retired. So we have to go after the millennial market. We need to keep them not only in West Hartford, but in our state. And we need to be a draw to attract them for our workforce. Jobs are really a major concern. We've had a lot of corporate headquarters. GE, my former employer, is no longer in Stamford. They've left the state, gone to Boston. Aetna, that's a heartbreaker. Someone here for a couple of centuries, and now they're moving their headquarters. So we've got to find a way to incent these firms, both to stay and to come in and find, Connecticut attractive again. But that's not going to happen, quite frankly, until we get our finances in order. People want to see, especially business leaders, stability. They want to know that they can rely on budgets and things like that. The fact that we don't even have one now, it's really concerning. So I'm actually concerned about the opposite happening. But I think, West Hartford is fantastic. I mean, that's why I'm running. I love the town so much. I'm glad to be a resident. It's been great for my family. And there's a lot of really positive things here, undoubtedly. But Chris touched on something with affordability. The expenses base is going up. It's gone up 45% in 10 years, and taxes along with it. I know some folks got their escrow statements, and taxes are up. And I'm not using this as a scare tactic. There's plenty of people in town who can afford this, and it's not an issue. But I am concerned about seniors, young people, young families, and the middle class. I hear it. I know seniors that are not living in town any longer because they couldn't afford to stay, not because they wanted to leave, but they didn't feel that they had the wherewithal to be able to stay. So, I'd like to see that kind of stabilize over time. And there's an adage, you get what you pay for. We have fantastic things here. So, it's kind of a catch-22, but we are kind of pushing the envelope. We pride ourselves in our school systems and our communities, and they are fantastic. I love Morley School, where my daughter goes. It's great. But, the reality is, a young woman talked to me on the campaign trail, and she said she needs a bigger house. She's got 3 young children, and there's competition. She can go to Farmington, South Windsor, Glastonbury. I'm not saying they're as good as West Hartford. I think West Hartford beats them all hands down. But there is competition when it comes to affordability, and they still have good school systems. So we have to kind of open our eyes a bit that we do have. They're even recreating centers in these towns. They're duplicating what we're doing. I mean, flattery is a great thing, but I think we need to keep our eyes open if we really want to attract millennials and businesses, that there's other locations for them to go.
Okay. Yeah, we've talked a lot about bringing millennials in. What about corporate and business?
Well, so
Do you think there's some opportunities here?
Well, I think to some extent it's the same question.
Mm-hmm.
GE, for example, I mean, it wasn't about taxes, obviously. They went to Boston. And it's going to New York. It was the excitement of where they wanted to have their corporate headquarters. And frankly, primarily, the top people. And so certainly with that, we hope they'll leave most of their workers here. Because I think actually their workers would prefer to be in Hartford, much more affordable, livable place, our region, than Manhattan. But no, I think that we in West Hartford, and we sort of think about ourselves as a town, but we're the driver of economic development in the Hartford region. This is the place people want to live. And so the more we can make West Hartford an attractive place, the better we are for the whole region to attract jobs. When I was door knocking this past weekend, and I kept on knocking on doors of millennials, or even younger, I thought. I was feeling very old as the doors were being opened by people owning homes a lot earlier than I did. But they I had like 3 or 4 people who had grown up. I always ask, where you're from, to see, we have New Yorkers coming here from DC. I got a bunch of people who had grown up in other towns in Connecticut. And they stayed. But they stayed in Connecticut, but they came here. And there's a reason for that, because of what we're doing right. So we're an exciting town, we're vibrant, we're the place I think young people want to live. And of course we have to deal with affordability. We've got to maintain plentiful housing options, whether it's smaller homes, starter homes, and apartments. I think we're doing that, but it's a constant struggle of having better transportation needs, having all those sort of things that attract people. But we also want to be fun. We're working on new zoning rules to allow more fun, what's the term, the interactive recreational facilities. We're doing that sort of thing as a job creator. And just one other point, I think that it's not just attracting millennials, I think it's also keeping the older people here as well. I think our seniors want to be in that kind of community as well, and I think that's really why we're succeeding.
Okay. Liam, how about you?
As a fellow millennial with Chris, there are a lot of reasons why I moved back here. I mean, the number one reason why millennials are moving here with the anticipation of raising a family is the school system, which continues to be and will, as long as we're all here, be one of the best in the entire state and in the country. And I think this council has made that, on both sides of the aisle, I think, has made that a #1 priority. And it will always be, it's a #1 issue for me. And also as a Morley School graduate, it's definitely something that people want to be there. I mean, in my neighborhood, in the Morley School neighborhood, we can all walk there. It's very, you have that interaction with your neighbor, but that's what people are looking for. But I think what the town has done a really great job, and we have a perfect example of this with the brand new opening of the Del Mar. I mean, things of that nature that are bringing kids in. I mean, you have right across the street, you have the Blue Black Square. We have all restaurants and bars opening up. This is as Ben was saying, this is the hub of Greater Hartford. I mean, say what you want about Hartford, it's a great city, but West Hartford is where people of my generation come, and they bring their family, they spend their money, they have a great time, and that's why they want to be here. I mean, I think the other thing that millennials want is they want great leisure services for their kids, right? Because not only what's so different about our generation is that both people in the household are working, right? So that we need to have really good programs for our kids, and we have great programs. Both Chris and I, that's where Chris and I first met on Harry's Pizza basketball. But those are the type of things that we have.
Plug for Harry's Pizza, okay.
But that's why people move here, and that's what they remember. That's what we come back here. We do that for. I think it's just really important that we talk about how great this town is. I mean, and not only that, but how about New Park Brewery, right on that area is fantastic. I mean, that's what cities are doing, and we're a suburban town turning an industrial area into a thriving place where we have food trucks and beer and people are having a good time. I think that's great, and that's really we're taking it a step further. And in a way we're interacting with the city at the same time. I think it's great. I totally understand what Chris is talking about in regards to affordability. That is a #1 thing, but that is also a #1 priority for us as well. We have to pay the taxes too as a young family. We're very much focused on that. I think it's at top of our mind. But bring it back to people want to be here for the school systems, which continue to be one of the best in the country and in the state. Obviously, we have a fantastic downtown. We are continuously, rated as one of the best places to live in America, and we're doing this all despite what's going on at the state. So I think that's one of the best things to talk about in regards to millennials.
And I think everybody has brought up affordability here in town. We've had our mill rate increase, we've had reevaluation, taxes are going up. What do we do? Mm-hmm. Any thoughts?
Can I the property tax 10 years ago was 67% of the town budget. That we had other revenue sources. That's no longer the case. The state actually took money from fees and other things that we did. So now it's 87% of our budget. And so the structure is difficult. We also are unique in West Hartford, unique to any other community around us, even unique to Hartford, in that we have 2 mills that are related to a sewer that nobody else has in their property tax structure. So we actually are 37th in mill rate in comparison with equalized mill rate in our community. So it's a little bit, it's more complicated than we think. But this is a struggle. Property tax structure was never meant to support the kind of cost that it carries right now.
Okay. So what steps can we take?
Well,
it obviously is that is.
I think one of the things that is already going on is we believe in a constant open community, back and forth. And I think we will continue to do that as a #1 thing that I've talked about in my campaign. I want to make sure that we have an open and transparent government, but also making sure that we're upholding our end of the bargain at the same time. And it's a give and take. And you know what? From those conversations, we'll probably get better ideas than the ones that we have, because that's where the good ideas come from, not from the people that are sitting behind it, but from the community. They can take. That's what we're asking at the door. When I was going door to door, and I get that question, taxes are too high. So my retort is, well, I totally understand that, and I get it. So then, can you talk to me about what we can do? And that's a good give and take with folks, and they appreciate that.
And we are looking for good ideas. So what can we do? What can we bring to the town? More business, more corporate structure. What can we bring?
Are you asking me?
Oh yeah. I'm looking right at you, Chris. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So from my perspective, I was disappointed during the last budget cycle that both the Board of Ed and the town council were given a menu of potential items that they could use and eliminate, programs they could eliminate to close the gap on the budget side. And what that did, what the effect of that was there were different constituency groups in the town, be it those who were opposed to closing a senior center or those who were opposed to eliminating Quest, battling each other. And they became, emails after emails, and what it became was a conversation about how to protect the budget rather than how to mitigate, cut it down. And so I think that too often the focus is on programs. What are we going to cut? What will we eliminate? What I really think we need to do is change the way we operate. And what do I mean? On the collective bargaining side, yes, we are bound by binding arbitration. And it's a very perverse game for the town to be involved in, because what it is each side creates their best option that they could possibly conceivably do economically, and then the arbitrator will pick one of those two options. It's not good for the town. It's not about what can they do and be economically vibrant or what's fair. That's not the question. So I'm hoping that the state's going to change that rule. But and by the way, that's in the bipartisan budget that passed the legislature. But putting that aside, it's time for us to now talk to these collective bargaining units and make them our partners. Because whatever you hear up here, the fact is, if we don't change the way that we compensate our employees and they deserve stability, there's going to be eliminations. It's just the math behind it. I mean, if we don't change our budget and we have a roll-forward budget, next budget cycle we're looking at mills of probably 44, 45, easily on the property side. And I think these folks would probably agree with that. But the other thing is, we are, in some areas, administrative heavy. And so we can look at that as well. But I think fundamentally the issue is looking at how we operate it and make sure it's sustainable, not only for us in the government, not only for the population or residents who pay the taxes, but for our employees, because they deserve stability. They deserve to know in 5 years they're going to have a job, in 10 years they're going to have a job, so they can prepare. They deserve that. And I think that if, particularly with what's going on in the state, we have an opportune time to finally sit down and hash that out, all of us, because the road we're on is not going to work for the taxpayers, it's not going to work for the employees. So that's where I think the change has to happen.
Okay. Mary, any thoughts on that?
Well, that's a big one. I think that's a big piece of the pie. I would love to see growth, and I think it's challenging in a town like West Hartford because we are very developed. So there's not a lot of opportunity to either bring in, a new plant or even a new neighborhood. We're pretty much at the tipping point. So I think we have to think smarter. A big part of the economy right now is service and technology. I think we have to find a way to bring that here. We've got the bio things going on at UConn. How can we kind of have West Hartford be a microcosm of that and do some things like that? So I think we need to focus on growth. We need to get more jobs, and hopefully that will help us stabilize as well. But I think Chris's point about collective bargaining is very, very big.
Okay, appreciate that, yeah. Any last comments?
Sure. I think that we need to grow our grand list. The more growth we can do, the better we can control the taxes. Mm-hmm. Second, we should continue our efforts with the MDC to get rid of the ad valorem tax. It is an unfair burden.
That is the two.
Which the property tax, yes. Right? Mm-hmm. We actually pay, in your property tax, you're paying for your sewage. We should get rid of that, and we should thus reduce taxes and make it more of a user fee-based system. And then our comparison would be better to other towns who don't have that burden. And thirdly, we need to continue to work with our employees who have, in fact, worked very well with administration. We have cut back on pensions. We have cut back on health insurance. They have been partners with us. And the way to deal with the unions is, in fact, to treat them as partners.
Okay, wonderful. I appreciate that. Liam, any last thoughts?
I think he answered. I think I had. Okay. Do I have a minute?
30 seconds. 30 seconds. Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay. Oh, I just want to say I work very, very closely with the chamber. We actually have been so focused on business and welcoming new businesses, and we actually had 2 businesses in the fastest growing businesses in Connecticut in West Hartford. I'm meeting with them. We're talking about what do they like, what will make that better, and continue to build on that excitement and being West Hartford. We're seeing new businesses open all the time. There's small, but they're wonderful. So, anyway.
And on an up note, for
Yes,
sure.
absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Liam, any last thoughts on that one?
No, I think Mayor covered
Okay,
it all.
okay. I know we spent a lot of time on budget. Money is important to people, and certainly taxes, you've heard that knocking on the doors, for sure. One last question. We're all civil, having a conversation here. How do we encourage civility to continue in our town and our public schools?
Anybody have time?
I'm not sure we have any time.
I think we do have a little bit of time for everybody to speak on civility. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. I don't see anybody cutting me off yet, so
I think we have to be examples as elected leaders of our local body of treating people with respect, and I think we've done a great job with that. I work very, very closely with Denise Hall. When I became mayor, we agreed that we would be an example. I also think talking to the schools, we go in and we frequently talk to the schools about their responsibility and how civility is essential.
Wonderful. Ben?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think, and we do try really hard. I think that we've had very respectful relationship with our Republican colleagues over the past 2 years. I hope we'll continue with that.
Wonderful. That is great. Mary, any thoughts on that?
Open-minded and consider each other's thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Respect.
Chris?
I think we just have to be subject matter based. We do disagree often, but I think overall we're very collegial with each other. Passions can rise because people care legitimately, but I don't think anyone ever questions the motive of the other person, and so I think that leads to productive discussions.
It's nice to hear that the motive is always making our town better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the main thing that we all have to keep in mind is equity, and then making sure that we continue to move forward as a town to keeping that in mind, whether it's in the school system, whether it's in development, just making sure that we have an equitable process for all the folks in town, keeping in mind people's needs and other people's strengths. So.
That's wonderful. Well, this ends our debate. We now are going to have some closing statements from each of our candidates. We have 2 minutes allocated for each of the candidates to make a final closing statement. And by draw of lottery earlier, Mary, you get to go first.
Very good. Let me ask you a couple of questions before I start. Are you happy with the direction of our state, Hartford, and our town? Do you want to leave our town better for our children? And do you like the color purple? I love West Hartford, its parks, excellent schools, and neighborhoods. What is especially wonderful is our residents and businesses and all the diversity and richness they bring. We consistently step up, like Morley School, where my daughter attends and holds an annual Backpack Brigade and Red Wagon food drive. West Hartford is a wonderful place to live and work, but we do face challenges. Our state and Hartford are in dire financial condition. We don't have a state budget, and West Hartford faces major cuts. West Hartford has seen expenses rise, steep property tax increases, and decreased services. We need to reverse this trend. Now for the color purple. I'm a moderate like many of you. I feel left behind by the political process and divisiveness. I hold many diverse social values. I'm a fiscal conservative, believing in personal responsibility. I chose the color purple for my campaign, a combination of blue and red. We need to go beyond party lines to get things done. Cost of living and high taxes dominate conversations, followed by jobs, good education, and safety. I will focus on these issues. I have volunteered in town and in our schools. When the MDC granted Niagara Bottling access to our water, I spoke out against the MDC's lack of transparency and oversight. What's needed now is strong financial acumen, leadership skills, problem-solving abilities, and compassion. It pains me to see the condition our state, Hartford, and towns are in. It hurts to see Connecticut and Hartford at the bottom of rankings. The policies of tax and spend have failed. I am concerned about affordability and its impact on seniors, young people, and small business owners. This is why I'm running. My financial acumen, experience, and leadership skills are needed. I want West Hartford to continue to have greatness and vibrancy, the best schools, public safety, and fiscally sound with opportunities for everyone. I'm asking for your vote. Please join me in clearing the path to keep West Hartford strong.
Thank you, Mary. Liam, you're our next.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the League of Women Voters for having me again, and thank you to the West Hartford Public TV for hosting this event. I am honored to be a candidate for the Democratic Party this year for Town Council. It has been a pleasure to be here today with everyone. But it's also just been a pleasure to go out and meet everyone at the door-to-door in the town that I grew up in. It's been such an honor to talk to folks, see how hard they're working, and talk about the issues with them back and forth. But I think the main thing for me in this campaign is making sure that there's a back and forth between a civil, as you talked about, a civil conversation between government and the people that elect them. With all that's going on in the world right now, I think, as you talked about, civility is so important. But on top of that, I think one of the main things that I've learned in my experiences is that not only that this government needs to be civil, but it needs to be equitable. And I think that the town has moved in that direction. I think we need to continue to do that, whether it's through our schools, through our leisure services, through our our policing, our firefighters. I think we need to keep that in mind. But I'll leave you at this. I hope everyone goes out and votes, regardless of what party it is. But I would encourage you to vote for row A in the Democratic Party, and I appreciate the support of everyone out there, and to the League for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Sherry?
Oh, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters and all the volunteers and your goal to bring educate voters. And thank you so much to WHC-TV. Without you, we would have a much less enlightened public, and you're critical to that. And thank you to our viewers that are watching to educate yourselves. This is really important. West Hartford is a diverse and vibrant community. We were named by Money Magazine as 15th best place to live in the small city category. This is remarkable. We were at a pool of 16,000 and a smaller pool of 823. It's impressive, but I don't want anyone to think this is by chance. West Hartford was ranked 30th out of 22,000 cities as the best place to live by livability.com just a few months ago for communities with populations between 20,000 and 350,000, the only Connecticut community ranked in the top 100. We were ranked by SafeWise as the 30th safest city in which to raise a child in the United States. Our schools continually rank as some of the best in the country by U.S. News and World Report, 70 different languages spoken and 128 out of 169 in spending. We've remained a AAA bond-rated community. We have millions of dollars in investment and reinvestment. Home values have remained strong. And this success doesn't happen by chance. These are significant accomplishments because of strong leadership and good governance. We have been always thinking and leading for the future to ensure stability, responsibility, integrity, civility, and compassion. I've always worked tirelessly on behalf of our community with all constituencies. I fight for West Hartford at the state level and work with our employees to achieve common goals. Leadership and hard work, integrity, dignity, respect, compassion, and empathy are more critical than ever. I have been so honored to serve you, and I am grateful for your trust. I will continue to do all I can to serve the wonderful community of West Hartford. Please support me and the Democratic team on November 7th. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherry. Ben?
Thank you. Let me begin by just saying that serving in our town council has been such an honor. Thank you. This is a great town, and our residents really love living here. These days, and at the doors, we've all talked about it, I've met a lot of people who are just sick and tired of DC politics and the gridlock happening in Hartford, and I don't blame them. But here in West Hartford, we don't focus on the politics. We focus on what matters, a good quality of life for all of us. That's why we continue to rank as one of the best places to live, and our schools are awarded national recognition. Because West Hartford is such an attractive place for businesses, our grand list has continued to grow. We've seen big changes at Corbin's Corner, new businesses on Park Road and Bishop's Corner, and the continued success of the center. This is smart growth that makes our town more walkable and bike-friendly. We now have weekly recycling, increased solar power, and beekeeping. If I were going to describe West Hartford to someone who has never been here, and I do that a lot, I would use words like diverse, vibrant, innovative, and compassionate. We as a town make intelligent and well thought out decisions, and that is the key to our success. I hope I will earn your vote to serve a second term on town council. I will continue to be a strong voice for environmental responsibility and diversity. I will protect our pocketbooks by making sure every dollar spent is appropriate and necessary, and that we pay down debt. Thank you for your consideration of my candidacy. I would appreciate your continued support for me, Ben Winograd, and for the rest of the Democratic team on Election Day, November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Chris, we'll end with you with your closing statement.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Appreciate it. It has been an honor, truly, to serve my hometown as a member of the town council, and it's been great to do that, while my kids were young, so they can really learn about community service. But the reason I'm running for re-election is because I've always thought that West Hartford's greatest attribute has been that it's a place where all people of different backgrounds and socioeconomic levels can call home. And I believe that the economic trends of West Hartford that we've been talking about throughout this budget, the trajectory of throughout this debate, its budget trajectory, I think, is making that legacy of West Hartford at risk. It's putting it at risk. Since 2003, the Democrat Party has been in power. Over that period of time, our budget has increased $127 million, or 80%. The school budget has risen from $90 million to $160 million. At the same time, our town population has remained flat, and our student population has declined and is projected to continue to decline over that same period of time.